Hey guys. Tonight we are drifting down a quiet river in Japan, under a pale moon that glows across the slow, black surface like silver paint brushed onto old parchment. You smell faint salt and algae. Frogs murmur softly along the banks. Bamboo groves sway overhead, whispering secrets that only the river can hear. A lantern flickers on a wooden fishing boat tied to a rotting dock. You step off onto damp soil, your shoes sinking slightly as crickets chirp in rhythmic waves around you. Ahead, in the small village, you hear faint laughter rising from houses clustered along the river like sleeping animals. You probably won't survive this journey if you ever truly stood here barefoot, dipping your hand into this dark, silent water. The poison it holds is patient, ancient, and utterly without mercy. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know in the comments where you're listening from tonight, and what time it is for you. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You tread quietly through narrow lanes lined with dark wood houses. Thin paper windows glow with candlelight. You see men returning from evening fishing, carrying baskets of silver fish that glint like coins under the lanterns. The air tastes faintly of smoke, riverweed, and fried squid. A dog tied outside one house wags its tail sleepily as you pass. People here live as their grandparents did. They wash clothes in the river, they bathe in it, and they scoop up buckets to boil rice or make tea. You hear the splash of water ladled into iron pots. No one notices the faint chemical tang beneath the cool, fresh taste. Some elders even say it tastes better than rainwater, a subtle sweetness. Like metal, polished so long it almost turns to honey. Historians still argue whether the villagers noticed changes in their water early on. Some oral accounts hint that women complained of itchy rashes after washing clothes, or that fish organs began to swell with strange colors long before people fell sick. But there were no tests then, only quiet suspicions drifting like steam over miso soup. Tonight, as you stand on the bamboo pier watching moonlight ripple across the current, you hear cicadas pulsing in the dark trees behind you. Their chorus is thick and deafening, like a single insect mind screaming out the river's secret. You see an old man crouched by the bank, rinsing his rice bowl. He hums a folk song about a crane in love with a fisherman. Nearby, a teenage girl dips a long-handled ladle into the river and pours water into a clay jar. She smiles at you shyly, her teeth gleaming in lantern light. The jar's rim is chipped, stained with black lines of mineral deposits. You wonder how many generations have fetched water here without thinking. A quirky detail rarely mentioned is that villagers sometimes used floating bamboo baskets to chill bottles of sake in the river. They believed the cold river brought luck to the drinker, infusing the sake with the strength of moonlit currents. Tonight, one such bottle bobs against its rope, the painted label peeling under dripping condensation. Further upstream, a reed flute plays. The notes rise thin and mournful, weaving through bamboo trunks. The melody speaks of the river's beauty, not its deadly secret. And no one here knows what seeps into their bones with each sip, each boil, each gentle touch of water on skin. You feel the damp night air slide across your face. Tiny midges land on your wrists, soft as drifting ash. You imagine sleeping here, curled under a mosquito net with the river's lullaby outside your window, never suspecting that while your ears rest to the frogs and flute, your body absorbs a poison so patient it could wait years before revealing its fangs. But for now, this village still sleeps in peace. The curse remains invisible, dissolved like moonlight in the river's black depths. You wake before dawn, the air cool and heavy with mist curling along the quiet lanes. Roosters crow lazily in distant yards as you step outside into pale blue darkness. Along the riverbank, silhouettes gather with baskets and metal buckets, moving like quiet ghosts in the drifting fog. You hear the soft clink of ladles against clay jars, and the rhythmic splash of water poured from one container to another. Women kneel along the bank, scrubbing pots and rice bowls with woven reed brushes. Children run barefoot on the dew-wet grass, shouting in hushed excitement as they carry small buckets to fetch morning water for their families. You watch a boy lean down to drink straight from the river, cupping its chill in both hands, slurping it noisily with a grin. Droplets shine on his chin in the first gold of sunrise. Historians still argue whether the metallic taste that eventually spread through the river was detectable from the beginning, or whether it built up over years of dumping industrial waste upstream. But what is certain is that people noticed something strange in the water's taste long before they understood what it meant. Some thought it tasted like old coins left under rain. Others said it was sweet, with an undertone of bitterness, like persimmon skin. A middle-aged fisherman dips his bamboo teapot into the river to fill it. You watch steam rise as he brews morning tea on a small clay stove, squatting beside his boat. The tea smells earthy and rich, masking any trace of the water's hidden poison. He sighs, sips deeply, and glances at the river with affection, as if greeting an old friend. Quirky detail. Villagers believed the river's morning water had more chai, or life force, than water drawn later in the day. Housewives would scold lazy sons who woke too late to fetch this early blessing. "Drink your luck while the gods still bathe," they would mutter, rinsing rice in the chill current. You walk along the planked dock where men untie narrow fishing boats painted in chipped red lacquer. A grandfather leans over to rinse his dentures in the river before fitting them back into his mouth with a satisfied smack. He grins at you, gums pink and clean, unaware he is swallowing particles that will one day twist his nerves into agony. As the mist thins, pale pink sunlight spreads across the surface like spilled oil. You see minnows dart below, flashing silver bellies in rapid bursts. A young girl drops her tin cup into the water and squeals as it bobs away with the slow current. Her older brother wades in to retrieve it, water swirling around his knees. He lifts the cup triumphantly, droplets cascading off its rim. The water looks so calm, so harmless. Ripples sparkle as swallows skim for insects. A gentle breeze carries the scent of boiling miso soup and wood smoke from breakfast fires. If you closed your eyes, you might believe this is paradise. But you probably won't survive this if you lived here and drank this water every day. The poison dissolves with perfect grace into each pot of tea, each mouthful of rice porridge, each boiled fishbone broth that smells like childhood and home. You notice a woman dipping strips of seaweed into the river, rinsing off sand before she dries them on bamboo racks. Another woman beside her washes cloth diapers, slapping them hard against smooth rocks. Tiny bubbles rise as she scrubs, popping silently in the pale morning sun. Historians still debate whether local doctors connected the river's metallic taste with the creeping illness that soon spread through the village. Most blamed seasonal fevers, bad spirits, or malnutrition. No one suspected that every ladleful of water contained mercury, invisible and silent, building its empire within human nerves. A teenage boy approaches with a wooden bucket full of shimmering fish, just caught by netting the shallows near the bank. He laughs, telling his friend that today's catch smells especially fresh. You notice the scales gleaming like polished armor. You wonder if mercury itself has a smell, or if it has learned to hide its scent to become the perfect killer. As the sun climbs higher, mist evaporates from the river, revealing its full, unbroken expanse, snaking through the village like a sleeping dragon. Fishermen push off into deeper water, oars dipping in silent rhythm. Women carry buckets back to smoky kitchens. Children squat to brush their teeth at the river's edge, spitting foamy water onto floating leaves. The day begins in this poisoned paradise, where thirst is quenched with death's silent gift. And no one knows yet. You remain by the river as morning grows into a hazy noon, sunlight glinting off ripples like shards of broken mirrors. Along the banks, the village market awakens with the smell of grilled fish and soy sauce drifting through damp air. Bamboo stalls creak under baskets of fresh vegetables, woven fans, and salted seaweed. You hear old women gossiping, their voices lilting above the cries of children chasing stray dogs between stalls. At the far end of the market, near a stone torii gate draped with white prayer papers, you see fishermen unloading baskets filled with gleaming silver fish. Their eyes bulge glassily, mouths frozen in silent screams. The fishermen are smiling, proudly holding up the catch to eager housewives who inspect each fish's firmness and smell its gills for freshness. Historians still argue whether anyone suspected that the river's fish, so abundant and beautiful, could carry an invisible poison. Mercury does not tarnish a fish's shine. It does not rot flesh or turn scales black. Instead, it infuses muscle tissue silently, twisting the rules of life with no warning sign except death itself. You watch a man gutting a fish with practiced precision, flicking its entrails onto a woven bamboo tray. Gulls swoop down screeching, fighting for the viscera. The man hums a folk tune as he slices off shimmering fillets, wiping his knife on a stained rag tied at his hip. A woman beside him dips fish heads into a pot of boiling broth, scooping out white eyeballs with a hooked spoon. She smiles as she tastes the soup, declaring it perfect for lunch. Quirky detail. Some villagers believed fish caught during a full moon carried special luck for pregnancy. Couples desperate for a child would save coins to buy moonlit-caught snapper, hoping its tender flesh held hidden blessings. They never imagined what else lay hidden within each bite. You sit beside a young boy who is gnawing dried anchovies from a paper packet. He offers you one shyly. The tiny fish crunch between your teeth, salty and bitter. You taste the river's secret in its spine, though no one else here can. Nearby, a fisherman counts coins into a wooden box, sweat dripping from his forehead onto the silver fish arranged like blades before him. His boat rocks gently against the dock, paint peeling to reveal dark, rotting wood beneath. He tells a neighbor that business is good this season. The fish are larger, plumper, heavier. He does not know Mercury has made their bodies dense with its hidden weight, each gram carrying invisible death into those who feast on them. You hear laughter as a teenage girl buys 2 fresh mackerel and carries them off in a straw basket lined with lotus leaves. She hums as she walks, imagining the miso-grilled feast she will prepare for her grandfather tonight. The basket sways against her hip, fishtails peeking out like curious tongues tasting morning air. Historians still debate whether the fishermen themselves suffered first, eating raw sashimi from their catch each dawn before selling the rest at market. Some testimonies recall men complaining of tingling in their hands, trembling that made it difficult to pull in nets. But no one connected these scattered sufferings to the shimmering fish that fed their families. You notice a cat slinking around the market stalls, fur matted with river mud. It eyes the fish basket hungrily before darting in to steal a chunk of fish head from an unattended tray. The woman selling it swats at the cat with her fan, cursing softly as the feline disappears behind bamboo crates. You probably won't survive this fish if you eat it daily. Mercury binds itself deep into muscle tissue, evading boiling pots, open fires, smoking kilns. It resists every cooking method, traveling seamlessly from the fish's flesh to yours, lodging in your nervous system like a silent iron nail hammered into your spine. The market begins to quiet as noon heat thickens the air. Housewives hurry home with baskets of fish, children trailing behind with dragonfly nets and paper fans. The fishermen remain by their boats, gutting the last of the catch before washing blood and scales into the river that gave them life and will one day bring them death. The river glows in midday light, placid and silent, its surface broken only by drifting lotus blossoms and bobbing fishing lines. And beneath that gentle surface, Mercury dances, waiting to weave its curse into anyone who trusts the shimmering beauty hauled from its depths. Afternoon light slants through bamboo groves, casting long stripes across dirt paths leading back to the village. You hear cicadas screaming in the heat, their high chorus vibrating the air like invisible strings. As you walk past a row of houses perched on wooden stilts above the riverbank, you notice children playing in the dusty yard. Their laughter rises into the muggy air as they chase each other barefoot, dodging chickens and fluttering laundry. At first, everything looks normal, just another slow summer day in this riverside village. But then you notice a small girl standing apart, leaning on a bamboo cane. Her thin legs bend inward, toes curling against the dirt as she shifts her weight awkwardly. When she tries to join the game, she stumbles, falling onto her knees with a faint cry. The other children pause for a moment, looking at her with a mixture of pity and annoyance, before resuming their chase. You watch her mother rush from the house, wiping her hands on her apron, lifting the girl gently and brushing dust from her hair. The woman kisses her daughter's cheek and helps her stand. The girl's legs tremble like reeds in strong wind. Her mother smiles and guides her back indoors, her eyes shadowed with worry despite the gentle curve of her lips. Historians still argue whether villagers realized these twisted limbs were caused by the water or thought them punishments from unseen gods. Some believed angry river spirits cursed children for playing too close to sacred currents. Others whispered that fox spirits possessed the crippled, curling their limbs for mischief. Nearby, you see a boy dragging his right foot as he walks, each step an uneven lurch. His friends run ahead with wooden swords, leaving him behind. He sits on a stone step, sweat glistening on his brow, staring at his feet as if trying to will them straight. A teenage girl sits beside him, braiding strands of grass into a little crown to place on his head. He smiles weakly at her kindness, though tears well in his eyes, a quirky detail, despite their pain. These children often crafted toys from river reeds, woven fish, tiny baskets, dragonfly whirligigs. Even as their bodies failed, their small fingers remained nimble, weaving beauty from the same reeds that grew in poisoned waters. You probably won't survive this fate if mercury embeds itself into your nerves. The first signs are numbness in fingers, tingling in toes. Then come tremors, muscle weakness, sudden falls. Eventually your legs twist into shapes that no human should walk upon, bones curling under the weight of poisoned nerves. You walk down to the river where teenagers splash each other near the bank. One boy lifts a younger girl onto his shoulders. She squeals with delight, arms flung wide as water droplets scatter around her like falling crystals. On shore, an old man scolds them for making noise, but his scowl softens as he watches their laughter. He remembers playing here as a boy, too, unaware that the water's hidden curse grows stronger with each passing decade. Historians still debate how many children fell sick before doctors realized something deeper than spiritual punishment or poor nutrition was at play. Some village records mention children wasting away rapidly, while others describe gradual decline, limbs curling, eyes crossing, speech slurring until words became moans. You see a group of mothers gathered under a cloth awning, fanning themselves as they talk in low voices. One cradles a baby whose hands flutter constantly, fingers curling and uncurling like dying petals. Another mother gently massages her toddler's twisted feet, humming a lullaby as cicadas scream around them. Their conversation turns to rumors of a doctor from the city coming to study these illnesses. They wonder if he will bring a cure, or if he will simply poke and prod their children like sick animals in a distant laboratory. A cat limps past on 3 good legs, its 4th paw dragging behind. You watch it disappear into tall grass, tail flicking irritably at biting flies. The village is filled with such silent sufferers, both human and animal, each marked by the water's invisible brand. Evening creeps in with the smell of grilling fish and simmering miso soup drifting from kitchen windows. Lanterns glow like warm fireflies along narrow streets. Children are called indoors, their small twisted bodies disappearing into houses lined with tatami mats and prayer altars. The river flows on outside, dark and silent under a sky slowly bruising into night. You hear frogs begin their chorus along the banks, singing for moonrise, and beneath their lullaby, mercury waits in each ripple, poisoning a generation that still laughs, still plays, still dreams of tomorrow. Night has fallen fully now, wrapping the village in a soft, humid darkness. Crickets sing under the bamboo eaves as you walk along a dirt road lined with lanterns glowing golden behind paper screens. Wisps of smoke rise from hearth fires where women stir late-night rice porridge, steam curling around their tired faces. You continue down to the river where shadows move silently under the moon, looming above the far bank, like great metal beasts sleeping under starlight. Stand the factories. Their corrugated roofs gleam faintly, edged with rust, and thin towers puff out curling streams of smoke that vanish into the warm night sky. Historians still argue whether villagers initially saw the factories as blessings or omens. For many, they promised jobs and progress. Men trudged each dawn to work on assembly lines forging chemicals, plastics, fertilizers, and metal compounds. In return, their children were fed, and wives could buy new teapots, steel knives, and bright cotton yukata at market. A quirky detail, factory workers often wore protective caps stitched from recycled rice sacks. Housewives embroidered them with little designs: cranes for long life, turtles for wisdom, plum blossoms for perseverance. These charms guarded men's hearts but could not guard their lungs from fumes or their families from poisoned waters. You watch as a flickering truck rolls up to a gated entrance. Its headlights illuminate a sign: Chiso Fertilizer Plant. Inside, the night shift is beginning. Workers in blue cotton uniforms march in single file under buzzing fluorescent lights, passing a poster that reads, "Our progress is Japan's future." The smell of ammonium and sulfides burns your nostrils as you drift past. Factories loom over the river's edge, their concrete foundations sunk into soft mud. Pipes slither down into black water, releasing pale streams that spread out like ghost veins, dissolving quickly into dark currents. A faint hiss escapes the pipes as warm effluent hits cool river water, bubbles rising like silent laughter in the moonlight. Historians still debate when company officials first realized mercury compounds were slipping into the river. Corporate ledgers suggest they knew early on because internal memos discuss cost-effective filtration options. But filters were expensive. Profit was not. The factories thrived, pouring out fertilizers to feed rice paddies across Japan, while mercury poured silently from waste channels into the veins of the village below. You watch two workers crouched beside an open drainage trench, smoking cigarettes under a dim lamp. Their shadows loom large against the stained concrete walls. One flicks ash into the trench and jokes that fish must glow at night with all these chemicals. The other laughs, scratching his scalp under his rice sack cap, unaware that the same mercury will soon stiffen his own fingers. A cat slinks past their feet, eyes flashing green in lamplight. It sniffs at the frothy liquid trickling toward the river, then leaps away quickly, disappearing into the darkness with only its tail tip glowing under the bulb's dim cone. You probably won't survive here if you believe the factory's promise of safe innovation. Mercury, once released, never leaves. It travels from pipe to river to fish to human flesh, binding to cells, unraveling muscles, distorting minds. The factories remain silent about this. They hum with confidence, their windows aglow with electric pride, while the river outside gleams under moonlight, carrying death past drifting lotus leaves. Further down the riverbank, you see lights from village houses shimmering on the surface, distorted by gentle ripples. Women pour leftover bathwater onto vegetable plots beside their homes. Men smoke short pipes under open eaves, staring out at the dark line of factories across the water. No one speaks of pollution. They see only wealth blooming in distant smokestacks, their families fed and clothed with each shipment of fertilizer bound for Osaka or Tokyo. Historians still argue whether the government turned a blind eye, valuing economic recovery over rural life. Some scholars suggest silent agreements were forged, protecting factory owners from regulation as long as production continued. You hear a distant siren from the plant, signaling midnight shift change. The sound drifts across the silent river like a dying flute note. A soft breeze ruffles your hair, carrying the faint tang of chemicals and hot metal. The factories glow like slumbering dragons under a half-hidden moon, their chimneys puffing silent promises of prosperity into the night sky. And the river flows on below, carrying mercury through darkness, weaving its silent curse through sleeping bodies that trust its ancient, poisoned embrace. Morning comes with a damp breeze rustling through paper screens. Roosters crow lazily, their calls weaving with the distant clang of factory bells summoning workers to early shifts. You walk through narrow lanes lined with flowering shrubs, their leaves dripping dew onto stone pathways. The village is waking, but its quiet feels heavy, like the stillness before a funeral procession. In a small wooden clinic near the river, you see villagers gathered outside, sandals lined up neatly along the porch. Inside, a young doctor in a crisp white coat examines a child whose legs tremble uncontrollably. The mother bows repeatedly, tears dripping onto her folded hands as she pleads for medicine. The doctor frowns, tapping the child's knees with a small wooden hammer. The muscles barely respond. Historians still argue whether doctors truly believed these early cases were caused by bad spirits, or if they simply lacked the science to see the truth. Many blamed river demons or ancestral curses angered by unclean offerings. Others spoke of fox spirits, kitsune, slipping into children at night to twist their bodies in mischievous possession. The doctor prescribes herbal tonics and warm salt compresses. He tells the mother it might be malnutrition or perhaps lingering fever. His voice is calm, but when she bows again, you notice his eyes flicker with unease. He has seen too many twisted limbs lately, too many trembling hands, too many blank, unblinking stares. Outside, old women sit on low stools under the clinic's eaves, murmuring prayers as they roll worry beads between gnarled fingers. A few hold small charms wrapped in red cloth, protection against river curses. They glance nervously at the children waiting to be seen, crossing themselves with whispered Buddhist sutras as if shielding their souls from witnessing deformity. A quirky detail. Some families tried folk remedies by placing thin slices of daikon radish soaked in river water onto twisted limbs, believing the radish would absorb the poison. Housewives wrapped children's feet in radish slices at night, only to peel them away at dawn, damp and gray with failure. Gray. You watch a girl limp from the clinic, her knees knocking together with each step. Her grandmother supports her, one hand gripping the girl's thin shoulder, the other holding a cloth talisman stitched with cranes and lotus flowers for healing. They pass you in silence, the old woman's face carved with grief, the girl's eyes dull and vacant. Historians still debate when doctors first suspected mercury poisoning rather than spiritual affliction. Some argue that visiting specialists in neurology identified the symptoms quickly, but were ignored due to political pressure. Others believe local doctors were never trained to recognize such industrial diseases, diagnosing only what their medical school charts taught them. Fevers, parasites, rickets. You walk along the riverbank, watching fishermen haul in morning nets heavy with writhing fish. Their catch glimmers wet and silver in dawn light. A fisherman cuts open a large snapper with his gutting knife, inspecting its liver for fatness. He grins with satisfaction. Nearby, his young son stands barefoot in mud, staring vacantly at the river's slow current. His mouth twitches as if trying to form words he cannot speak. You probably won't survive this if your tongue begins to slur, if your eyes refuse to focus, if your fingers lose their grip on chopsticks, if your legs no longer hold your weight. Mercury unravels the nervous system thread by thread until the body becomes a puppet dancing to poison's silent song. Further along the river, you see temple priests blessing women with twisted infants strapped to their backs. They chant sutras under rustling prayer flags, flicking purifying smoke from sandalwood censers over bowed heads. Mothers weep quietly, pressing palms together, praying the spirits will leave their children's bones and let them walk again. Historians still argue whether these rituals were performed out of faith or helplessness. Some believe they strengthened community bonds, giving families a shared hope. Others suggest they distracted from demanding answers from factory owners or distant bureaucrats. The morning sun climbs higher. Burning mist from the river's surface, revealing its black depths swirling below floating prayer petals and torn lotus leaves. Birds cry overhead, circling before gliding off toward green mountains on the horizon. A patient breeze carries the smell of old fish and sandalwood ash through the village, ruffling the doctor's white coat as he steps outside to see his next trembling patient. And the river flows on, silent and unstoppable, carrying mercury through the veins of each family, poisoning prayers, potions, and hopes alike with every gentle ripple that kisses the shore. You find yourself walking along the riverbank as late morning light burns away lingering fog. The village seems subdued today, voices hushed, sandals scuffing quietly along dusty lanes. Near the edge of the main road, you see a gathering of townspeople clustered around a bamboo notice board. Tacked to it is a paper with thick black brushstrokes announcing a name that chills the air around you. Minamata disease. Historians still argue whether this naming brought relief, anger, or fear. Some recall it felt like a curse given form, a sickness so horrifying it deserved its own title, forever branding the village with shame and sorrow. Others believe it gave families a first glimmer of hope, believing that once named, it could finally be cured. You stand among men reading the notice aloud. Neurological symptoms, mercury poisoning, fish consumption. The words fall heavy on the morning breeze. An old man shakes his head and mutters, "But the river is life. How can it be death, too?" His wife tugs at his sleeve, tears filling her eyes. She glances at their teenage son leaning against a wall, legs trembling so violently his knees knocked together with each breath. A quirky detail: the disease was originally called cat dancing disease by fishermen who noticed their cats began staggering, leaping erratically, and flailing in spasmodic fits before dying near the riverbanks. Only later, when humans began to show the same strange staggering, did doctors connect the dots to mercury-laced fish? You walk past the clinic where the young doctor you saw earlier now speaks to a government investigator. The doctor's face is pale, lined with exhaustion and frustration. He gestures toward a chart pinned to the wall, showing clusters of red ink marks beside family names. Each mark represents a twisted limb, a frozen tongue, a vacant stare. Historians still debate whether the disease's official recognition forced the company to act or emboldened them to deny responsibility further. Some records suggest company doctors insisted villagers suffered from congenital weaknesses, malnutrition, or genetic curses, anything but factory waste. You see a mother kneeling by the river, washing rice for lunch. Beside her sits her daughter, legs splayed unnaturally, eyes drifting sideways, mouth half open. The mother talks softly to her as she rinses grains in river water, white starch swirling away into poisoned depths. When she finishes, she lifts her daughter onto her back with practiced strength, securing her with a faded cotton sling. The girl's head lolls against her mother's neck as cicadas scream from bamboo groves overhead. You probably won't survive this if your body begins its slow collapse from within. First, your fingertips tingle, then your lips tremble. Words become fog, movements become shivers. You remain aware, trapped in a body folding in on itself, every muscle dancing to Mercury's final lullaby. In the center of the village, priests begin chanting sutras for protection against the newly named curse. Incense coils rise into hot blue sky as villagers kneel, bowing heads to dusty earth. The priest's robes flutter in the breeze as he calls upon river spirits to forgive them for unknown sins. You hear weeping woven into the droning chants, mothers clutching small children with glassy eyes who cannot understand the meaning of this new name that now claims their lives. Historians still argue whether this moment, the naming of Minamata disease, was a turning point. Did it ignite the first sparks of protest, or did it deepen resignation among people who believed they were cursed by fate itself? You step away from the gathering crowd, walking toward the river's edge. Water laps gently at the muddy bank, sunlight fracturing across its rippled surface. Lotus leaves drift slowly by, their round green pads casting perfect shadows on water darkened by Mercury's invisible threads. The breeze carries the smell of fish stew simmering in a nearby house, mingling with faint iron and sulfur rising from the river. Children's voices float over the water as they play with reed boats. Unaware, their small fingers tremble more each day. The disease now has a name, but no cure yet. Only sorrow and anger gathering like thunderclouds above this quiet village as the river flows on, unrepentant, under the blazing summer sun. Afternoon sun burns high overhead, shimmering off tin rooftops and baking dirt lanes into cracked clay mosaics. You wander down a narrow alley where housewives hang indigo-dyed futons to air in the breeze. Children nap inside, limp with exhaustion, their small twisted limbs curled beneath thin summer blankets. As you reach the riverbank, a sharp cry pierces the drone of cicadas. You look up to see a cat staggering along the wooden dock, its orange fur matted with sweat and river mud. It steps sideways, front legs crossing awkwardly, head twitching as if flies torment its ears. Villagers gather silently to watch. their faces pale in the blinding sun. The cat arches its back, tail puffed like a bottle brush, then collapses onto its side. Its legs kick out in wild jerks, claws scratching at invisible demons. It lets out a yowl so ragged it sounds almost human before its body contorts into a final tremor, then lies still, mouth open in a silent scream. Historians still argue whether villagers realized these convulsing cats were warning them. Some believed fox spirits possessed cats first, testing their strength before turning to humans. Others saw it as punishment for disrespecting river deities who kept balance between animal and man. A quirky detail. Some children nicknamed these dying animals dancing cats because their final convulsions looked like frantic festival dances. They mimicked the cats' staggering walks for fun, never understanding they were imitating their own future. You probably won't survive if your body begins to dance this way. Mercury poisoning attacks the brain, triggering muscle seizures and wild convulsions. Once the dance begins, death soon follows, leaving a frozen mask of agony upon the face. Nearby, a teenage boy sits by the river, stroking his black cat's head as it lies panting in the heat. Its eyes flicker sideways, unfocused, whiskers trembling with each labored breath. He whispers softly, tears streaking dust from his cheeks, promising he will bury it by the bamboo grove where it once chased dragonflies all summer. Historians still debate how many cats died before doctors noticed their suffering mirrored human symptoms. Early veterinary records remain vague, dismissing the deaths as seasonal illness or parasites. But older fishermen still tell stories of hundreds of cats staggering off docks into the river, drowning mid-convulsion, floating away among lotus flowers. As you continue walking along the bank, you see old women gathered under a straw awning, fanning themselves against rising heat. One points with her chin at another cat limping along the path, its paws dragging uselessly. The women mutter prayers under their breath, crossing themselves with flicking fingers, eyes lowered so as not to attract the same fate upon their families. Downriver, children stand barefoot on the dock, tossing pebbles into the water. They see a dead cat bobbing among drifting bamboo leaves, its fur plastered to thin ribs. One child shouts, "Look, it's dancing with the fish." The others giggle, not knowing their laughter rings hollow beneath the screeching chorus of cicadas. You pass a fisherman gutting mackerel on a wooden plank. He pauses to watch a white cat stumble past, its legs collapsing under its weight. The fisherman sighs, wipes sweat from his forehead, and mutters, "Another one. Poor thing." Then he returns to slicing open fish bellies, his blade gliding through shimmering flesh as mercury drifts from cold river into living bodies, silent as moonlight. Historians still argue whether these dying cats could have saved hundreds of villagers if only their suffering had been heeded. Perhaps humans thought themselves too separate, too elevated to share the same fate as animals. Perhaps no one wanted to believe the river that gave them life could become death itself. The sun begins its slow descent toward evening, shadows lengthening across silent lanes where cats once prowled freely under moonlit rooftops. Now they lie curled under houses or hidden in reeds, trembling and twitching until their last breath leaves them, carried away by a breeze scented with river mud and sorrow. And the river flows on beneath a crimson sky, carrying its poison past dying cats, silent houses, and sleeping children whose own dance is yet to come. Evening descends with a heavy hush, dimming the orange glow of sunset into pale lavender across the river's glassy surface. Lanterns flicker to life along wooden eaves, their warm light trembling in the breeze scented with lotus, fish broth, and faint iron. You walk through narrow streets where tired men return from the factories, metal lunchboxes swinging from calloused hands. At the far end of the village, you see a tall iron gate leading into a sprawling complex of gray buildings. Beyond it rise the smokestacks of the Chiso chemical plant, their soot-stained flanks hidden by darkness. Inside, polished floors gleam under fluorescent lamps. Tatami meeting rooms smell faintly of cigarette smoke, ink, and chrysanthemum air freshener. In one such room, company executives sit around a low lacquered table, sipping green tea from fine porcelain cups. Their suits are freshly pressed, hair pomaded to shine under yellow lights. Papers rustle softly as a man clears his throat, reading from a report detailing rising cases of neurological illness in the nearby fishing village. Historians still argue whether these men understood the full truth or simply chose ignorance for profit's sake. Meeting minutes uncovered decades later record polite laughter, mild shrugs, and muttered lines like, "Perhaps they are simply malnourished," or "Villagers are known to invent curses when crops are bad," a quirky detail. These meetings often included elaborate seasonal sweets served on tiny gold-edged plates. Wagashi shaped like plum blossoms in spring, maple leaves in autumn. Tea ladies moved silently between suited men, placing sweets with delicate bows, unaware that outside, villagers' limbs curled inward like the wagashi's intricate folds. You probably won't survive this if you place your faith in those sworn to protect you. For as these executives sip fragrant tea, nodding sagely at bar graphs and chemical breakdowns, they quietly agree no compensation will be offered, no admission of guilt made. Mercury, after all, is profitable when bound to acetaldehyde molecules, a vital industrial process. Fishermen's twisted children, however, produce nothing of value for quarterly ledgers. In one corner, a younger executive shifts uncomfortably. His father was born in the riverside village. He knows the taste of its fish, the softness of its fogs. His eyes flicker with guilt as he listens to an older director proclaim, "There is no definitive proof linking us to these illnesses." The young man lowers his gaze, folding his hands in silence, as teacups clink softly like funeral bells across polished wood. Historians still debate whether internal documents warning of mercury's toxicity were suppressed intentionally or simply archived into dusty irrelevance. Decades later, memos emerge detailing early lab tests showing rising mercury levels in river sediment and fish tissue. But back then, these papers remained locked away behind silent sliding doors. You drift past an open window where night air carries cicada songs and the scent of river mud. Beyond the factory gates, you see lanterns bobbing along the riverbank as fishermen cast their nets for the evening catch. Families sit on verandas eating grilled eel and rice, oblivious to the meeting unfolding just beyond the bamboo fence. Inside, the executives discuss public relations strategies. One suggests offering scholarships to bright village children. Another proposes a community festival sponsored by the factory, with games and sweet rice cakes to bolster goodwill. All agree on one thing: no apology will be issued. To admit guilt is to lose everything. A tea lady kneels to pour fresh sencha into each cup, her slender wrist trembling slightly as she realizes how tense the room feels, despite polite smiles. She bows and retreats, sandals whispering across tatami mats. You probably won't survive if you wait for these men to save you. Their power is built on denying your pain. Their prestige relies on your silence. And as mercury seeps further into each trembling limb, their quarterly profits rise, polished and bright as the porcelain cups clinked in unison before they stand to leave. Historians still argue whether these decisions were born from callous greed or bureaucratic blindness. Perhaps both. But as the meeting ends, men bow and slide open wooden doors, stepping into moonlit corridors lined with framed certificates and company slogans in thick calligraphy. Outside, the river flows past, black and endless under a silent sky, carrying away their waste and washing clean their carefully curated consciences. Night deepens into a dense velvet hush, pierced only by cricket choirs and the rustling of reeds along the riverbank. You follow the moonlit path toward the fishermen's docks, where narrow boats bob gently against worn wooden posts. Lanterns sway above, casting pools of gold across dark water swirling with drifting lotus petals. Near the docks, you see families gathered under a makeshift pavilion of bamboo poles and straw mats. Smoke rises from small clay stoves as women ladle steaming fish broth into bowls. Men crouch in circles, sipping sake from chipped ceramic cups, their shoulders slumped with exhaustion. The air is heavy with the smell of miso, grilled snapper skin, and river mud. Historians still argue whether this community resilience, gathering together despite creeping despair, protected villagers from deeper psychological collapse. Some anthropologists say these meals forged bonds of survival in the face of silent mass poisoning. Others argue it was mere ritual, offering comfort but no solutions. A quirky detail: fishermen's sake cups were often carved from whalebone or deer antler, passed down through generations. Each bore faint etchings of sea gods or carp leaping up waterfalls, blessings for strength and abundant catches. Tonight, the cups tremble slightly in old men's hands as tremors ripple through fingers swollen with pain. You watch a middle-aged fisherman raise his cup unsteadily, sake sloshing over his gnarled thumb. He toasts his neighbor with a crooked smile. "Here's to tomorrow's catch." His words slur, lips curling awkwardly around syllables. The other man clinks his cup gently, eyes dark with unspoken fear, before tipping the liquor back into his throat. Children sit nearby, slurping fish soup from wooden bowls, eyes half closed with sleep. A small girl tries to lift her spoon, but her fingers tremble so violently the broth spills onto her lap. Her mother wipes it away with a rag, humming softly, pretending not to notice the girl's tears glistening in lamplight. You probably won't survive this if your body begins to rebel in such quiet humiliations. Mercury poisoning is insidious, stripping dignity first, hands that cannot hold chopsticks, feet that stumble across tatami mats, tongues that refuse to form words of love or farewell. Historians still debate whether villagers suspected the truth in these gatherings. Some testimonies recall old fishermen whispering that their nets pulled in death shining with silver scales, while others prayed to river gods for forgiveness, believing their greed or disrespect had angered unseen spirits into cursing the fish. One elder kneels at the dock's edge, dipping his fingers into moonlit ripples. He scoops a handful to drink, slurping it with a resigned sigh. You see his lips twitch faintly as if tasting something bitter. He closes his eyes, murmuring an old fisherman's prayer to Ebisu, god of luck and sea bounty. His voice cracks with fatigue. He sets his sake cup beside him and leans forward to rinse his face, letting black water wash over sunburned skin lined like drying river clay. Nearby, a teenage boy sits silent with his back against a bamboo pole. His eyes are vacant, staring at drifting lantern reflections. Every so often his legs jerk violently, rattling the straw mat beneath him. His mother presses a folded towel against his knees to stop the shaking, whispering lullabies into hair damp with sweat. You hear the river lapping against dock posts, each splash like a quiet sob beneath cicada songs. The lanterns sway an evening breeze scented with fish broth, wood smoke, and faint, rotting algae. Across the water, the factory chimneys glow red against black sky, puffing out thin trails of smoke that drift unseen into midnight's vast silence. Historians still argue whether these communal meals, punctuated by tremors and slurred toasts, were acts of defiance or surrender. Perhaps both. Tonight, men drink together knowing tomorrow they will pull nets from poisoned waters again, smiling for buyers at market, bowing politely while death coils unseen in every wriggling fish. The moon drifts higher, silvering ripples that carry away prayers, tears, and tiny droplets of mercury invisible in black currents. And the river flows on, indifferent to trembling hands and twisted limbs along its banks, gliding silently toward the distant sea, under a sky where not even gods can hear the dying dance of those it feeds. Dawn bleeds across the sky in pale pinks and muted golds as you drift downriver toward the coastal town. The current carries floating lotus petals past half-submerged reeds, their slender stalks trembling under the breath of morning wind. Along the banks, you see wooden houses rising on stilts, their sliding doors open to let in fresh air scented with brine and river mud. Here, at the river's mouth, where fresh water meets the sea, fishing boats crowd together in a dense forest of masts and folded nets. Seagulls scream overhead, circling the harbor for scraps as fishermen unload their catch onto bamboo trays. Market women stand ready with sharpened knives, eager to slice and weigh each shimmering fish before sunrise heat dulls their silver sheen. Historians still argue whether this harbor town was complicit in spreading the poison further inland. Fish from Minamata Bay were loaded onto trains and carts, carried deep into surrounding prefectures where families welcomed the fatty meat as rare delicacy. Each bite became an unknowing communion with Mercury's silent death. A quirky detail, seafood from Minamata was famous for its oily richness and smooth flavor. Chefs in upscale city restaurants prized its mackerel and snapper, believing the unique taste came from ideal salt levels in river-fed bays. Some wrote poems comparing its sweetness to new love blooming under cherry blossoms. You watch a fishmonger lift a flopping tuna onto his cutting board, muscles straining against its bulk. With practiced speed, he slices open its belly, steam rising into cool dawn air. Blood runs down the bamboo grooves onto the stone floor, mingling with seawater and fish scales to form a glittering crimson river. Customers lean in, nodding appreciatively at its fat-lined flesh, each gram laced invisibly with mercury. Nearby, a woman arranges cleaned fish onto straw mats to dry in the rising sun. Her hands work quickly, flipping small sardines and anchovies so their silver bellies gleam outward, attracting customers strolling by. Her baby lies in a reed basket beside her, staring up at gulls with wide, unblinking eyes. You notice the child's fingers twitching rhythmically, tiny fists clenching and unclenching in a silent, unstoppable dance. You probably won't survive this if you are born into such poisoned abundance. Mercury crosses the placenta, weaving into growing nerves, shaping a child's mind and bones before its first breath. Each flickering kick in the womb may carry Mercury's promise of a life spent trembling. Historians still debate when doctors first documented congenital Minamata disease. Children born with twisted limbs, speechless mouths, and blank staring eyes. Some believe early cases were hidden by embarrassed families. Others suggest the government suppressed hospital records to protect economic interests. You hear a fish auctioneer begin his chant, voice rising and falling with hypnotic rhythm as buyers shout bids into salty morning air. Prices climb rapidly for mackerel with dense, oily flesh. The auctioneer slaps each fish's flank approvingly, sending droplets of brine scattering like cold rain onto wooden crates and barefoot boys carrying baskets to awaiting carts. A teenage apprentice slips on fish guts, slicking the stone floor. He lands hard on his side, letting out a sharp yelp. Older fishermen laugh, shaking their heads. "Careful," one mutters, "or you'll end up like those cats upriver, dancing on your back." The boy scowls, wiping his hands on his shorts before lifting another heavy basket onto his narrow shoulders. You walk down a side lane where seaweed dries on bamboo poles, their green-black strands curling in the breeze like witches' hair. Elderly women squat nearby, sorting clumps into neat bundles for market stalls. They chatter softly about a rumor that doctors from Tokyo University will visit soon to study the sickness upriver. One woman clicks her tongue, saying, "They'll just write their reports and leave. We're the ones who keep eating." The sun rises higher, illuminating the ocean beyond the harbor, its waves trembling with pale morning light. Fishing boats glide out one by one, their engines coughing smoke into clear blue sky. And beneath them, mercury threads swirl invisibly through each flick of fin and gill, weaving a curse across villages and cities alike. The river has done its work well, carrying its poisoned blessing into the wide open sea, where no boundary can hold back its dark and silent tide. The day grows hot and bright, cicadas screaming in the trees as you drift inland again, away from the bustling harbor. You walk through rice paddies shimmering under noon sun, their flooded fields reflecting blue sky broken only by thin green stalks rising like spears from glistening mud. Farmers wade knee-deep in warm water, bent double as they pluck weeds from around young rice shoots. Straw hats shade their faces, sweat dripping from sunburned chins onto rippling surfaces below. Frogs croak lazily among reeds lining irrigation channels. Dragonflies skim just above the water, wings catching flashes of gold and copper in the fierce light. Historians still argue whether these farmers realized their fields were fed by the same river that carried mercury from factory pipes to fish bellies. Some believed flowing water washed away all impurities, leaving only blessings from the mountain gods. Others whispered fears at night, afraid to speak them by day lest rice spirits abandon their fields in anger. A quirky detail: many rice farmers used tiny wooden clappers to scare sparrows from seedlings, hung on bamboo poles. These naruko rattled in the breeze, clacking like skeletal applause each time sparrows dared land among the tender green shoots. You probably won't survive if you eat rice grown with poisoned irrigation. Though less concentrated than fish, mercury binds to the muddy silt that feeds rice roots, building slowly in human flesh until fingers tremble and minds unravel like rotting straw ropes. In one paddy near the village edge, a farmer pauses to straighten his back, hand pressed against his spine as he winces in pain. His daughter stands nearby, barefoot in warm mud, folding lotus leaves into little cups to float down irrigation channels. When she lifts her hands to show him a tiny fleet of green boats, her wrists shake so violently that the boats tip sideways, sinking into brown water. He forces a smile, ruffling her hair with thick, muddy fingers. Tears glisten at the corners of his eyes as he bends back to work, unable to lift her into his arms as he once did. Historians still debate whether government agricultural agents inspecting rice yields each season noticed the spread of sickness in these farming families. Some believe field reports were buried in bureaucratic archives, never reaching ministers who spent their days in polished Tokyo offices, reading newspapers praising post-war economic recovery. You walk along the narrow embankments dividing paddies, your sandals flicking droplets of muddy water against your ankles. Crickets buzz from grassy banks. Further ahead, a group of women wash laundry in a side channel, slapping kimono cloth against smooth river stones. Their chatter mixes with soft splashes as they wring out indigo-dyed cotton and pin it to bamboo poles under blazing sun. One woman's hands shake so badly she cannot twist cloth properly. Another woman helps her, strong fingers working quickly, but her eyes flick sideways, dark with fear at the sight of trembling flesh that mirrors her own mother's hidden illness. You probably won't survive if your body begins to slip away, while your mind remains trapped within. Mercury poisoning often preserves thought long after speech and movement vanish, leaving sufferers imprisoned behind glassy eyes that can only watch as the world drifts by. As you reach the edge of the paddies, you see farmers gathered under a willow tree for lunch. They sit in a loose circle on woven reed mats, unwrapping rice balls stuffed with pickled plum. A young man tries to lift his chopsticks, but his fingers splay uselessly. He laughs awkwardly and picks up the rice ball with both hands, biting down as grains spill into his lap. His laughter turns into a choked sob, quickly muffled by his mother sitting beside him. She presses his hand in hers, whispering prayers to mountain spirits to cure his trembling before next planting season. Historians still argue whether it was fish, rice, or drinking water that sealed these villagers' fates. Perhaps it was all three, weaving together like twisted rushes into a mat of poison strong enough to bind an entire generation. The breeze rustles through rice stalks, carrying the scent of mud, sweat, and faint iron downstream. Dragonflies dance in shimmering arcs under cloudless sky, and beneath the silent surface of every flooded field, Mercury lies hidden in black mud, waiting patiently to rise through root and stem into the hands and hearts of those who plant their lives upon poisoned earth. Late afternoon light filters through the tall cedar trees, lining a gravel path that winds toward the village shrine. You walk beneath their towering trunks, air cool and shadowed, scented with dry needles and faint incense drifting from stone lanterns glowing pale in dusky silence. At the shrine's entrance, wooden prayer plaques sway gently in the breeze, their handwritten wishes clattering softly against one another. You read their faded ink. Please cure my son's trembling. Protect our village from the river spirit's curse. Let my daughter walk again. Hundreds hang under the broad eaves, each carrying silent grief to unseen gods. Historians still argue whether these prayers brought villagers comfort or deepened their despair. Some anthropologists say belief in kami, spirits residing in rivers, rocks, and trees, helped families accept their suffering as fate rather than betrayal by human hands. Others believe these prayers diverted anger away from factory owners who profited while children withered. A quirky detail: shrine maidens here traditionally wore bright red hakama trousers with white kimono tops. During Mercury protests decades later, village women sewed miniature red hakama for their dolls, carrying them in silent marches to symbolize innocence, lost to poisoned waters. You pass through the Torii Gate and climb mossy stone steps, cicada calls rising into the darkening sky. At the top stands the main shrine, its wood darkened by centuries of rain, wind, and prayers. A lone priest sweeps fallen needles from its stone courtyard. He pauses to bow deeply before the inner sanctum, lips murmuring words too soft for you to catch. Nearby, a woman kneels, pressing her forehead to clasped hands. Tears slip down her cheeks onto the polished wood floor. Her young son sits beside her, back hunched, eyes flickering rapidly under half-lowered lids. His fingers drum against his knees in a trembling rhythm, as if tapping out a silent song only he can hear. You probably won't survive if prayer becomes your only medicine. Mercury cares nothing for sincerity, devotion, or sacred offerings. Its path follows physics and chemistry alone, binding to nerves with impersonal precision until movement fades to stillness and words melt into silence. The priest finishes sweeping and walks slowly toward the mother and child. He kneels beside them, lays his hand gently upon the boy's crown, and begins chanting low sutras to purify body and spirit. His voice blends with the rustle of cedar needles overhead, with distant crow calls echoing through gathering twilight. Historians still debate whether shrine priests ever suspected industrial waste was the true curse, rather than river kami angered by unclean rituals. Some records suggest priests performed mass purification ceremonies, casting sakaki branches and rice into dark waters to placate spirits. Others hint at quiet knowledge, unspoken truths hidden to protect their place as community anchors. As darkness deepens, lanterns flicker to life along the path back to the village. You follow their soft golden glow, passing rows of stone fox statues draped in faded red bibs. Their blank eyes watch you leave, silent and unmoving. Behind you, the shrine bells toll twice, ringing out into the night like muted cries drifting through cedar shadows. You walk past the Iama prayer boards again, their clattering wooden voices whispering wishes that may never be granted. The breeze carries faint temple incense mingled with the bitter tang of river mud from far below. You probably won't survive if your only defense is hope. Mercury has no ears for prayer. It drifts unseen through water, fish, rice, and flesh, unstoppable by sutra or sacrifice. Patient as a stone fox waiting in eternal stillness for footsteps that never come. At the foot of the shrine steps, you pause to look back one last time. The dark silhouettes of cedar trunks rise into the violet sky, lanterns glowing at their bases like tiny fallen stars. Somewhere beyond, the river flows through silent fields and empty boats, carrying its poison gently out to sea under a sliver of moon cold and bright above a sleeping, trembling world. Night thickens into an indigo silence as you walk back toward the village, sandals whispering against dusty lanes lined with sleeping houses. Paper lanterns sway under wooden eaves, casting warm circles of light onto dark earth below. Dogs bark lazily from verandas, tails thumping once before they settle back into dreams of rabbits among bamboo groves. You pause outside a small wooden house, where voices murmur within. Peering through the open shoji screen, you see a family gathered around a low table. An oil lamp flickers in the center, illuminating faces lined with exhaustion. Bowls of fish stew sit half-eaten before them, steam curling into dark rafters. Historians still argue whether meals shared under such shadows strengthened families or deepened grief. Some say communal suffering forged unbreakable bonds. Others suggest it eroded hope day by day, leaving only numb resignation. A quirky detail: many families placed fresh sprigs of shiso leaf in their fish stew to mask any muddy bitterness. The peppery mint scent fills the room now, mingling with the faint iron tang rising from thin broth that holds silent poison within each delicate bite. At the table's corner sits an elderly grandfather, chopsticks trembling in his thin fingers. He tries to lift a piece of mackerel to his mouth, but his grip falters. The fish slips back into the bowl, splashing broth onto his kimono sleeve. He laughs softly, shaking his head, but his eyes fill with tears that he quickly blinks away. Beside him, his granddaughter mimics his shaking hands, giggling as she wobbles her chopsticks dramatically. Her mother hushes her gently, eyes flicking with pain before she returns to picking fish bones from her son's bowl. The boy stares blankly at the flickering lamp, his mouth open slightly, lips moving in silent whispers to ghosts only he can hear. You probably won't survive this if you pretend the shaking is only age, or nerves, or bad luck. Mercury does not discriminate between youth and elders. It crawls through nerve endings with the same cold patience, weaving death's tapestry one twitch at a time. Outside, cicadas drone in the dark trees, their chorus rising and falling like the tide. A thin breeze drifts through the open screen, rustling papers pinned to the wall behind the family. You see neat calligraphy listing debts owed to the rice merchant, the doctor, the fish wholesaler. At the bottom, scrawled in a child's messy hand, is a poem. Silverfish in dark river, dance for us forever until we fall asleep. Historians still debate whether villagers knew the factory's waste flowed so far downstream. Some argue knowledge spread quickly in whispered laments at dawn fish markets. Others believe few wanted to speak aloud what they feared most, that the river itself had turned against them. The grandfather sets down his chopsticks and sighs. His eyes drift to the window where moonlight glows softly against the paper screen. "I used to fish under full moons," he murmurs, voice trembling like his hands. The snapper glowed like lanterns in the nets. "I thought we were blessed." His wife lays her hand over his, pressing down gently to still its shaking. "You probably won't survive if memories of blessings blind you to curses blooming beneath the same shimmering moon." Mercury is silent, unblinking, unfeeling. It weaves its dance through flesh, whether you bow to it in reverence or spit into the dark river in anger. The oil lamp flickers low, shadows curling upward along wooden beams, as if reaching for something just out of sight. Outside, the breeze carries the scent of river mud and dying lotus blossoms through sleeping lanes. The dog lifts its head briefly, sniffing the air before curling back into silent dreams beneath the wavering paper lanterns. And the river flows on under a moonlit sky, slipping quietly past house after house, carrying trembling prayers downstream into darkness where fish still glimmer silver and sweet, their flesh hiding death's patient, invisible kiss. Morning arrives in a silent gray drizzle, softening the sharp edges of rooftops and blurring distant hills into misty shadows. You walk along the riverside path, where bamboo groves drip with rain, their thin leaves rustling with each trembling droplet that falls from high branches. The village feels hushed today. Doors remain closed, paper screens pulled tight against damp air. Smoke rises thinly from kitchen chimneys, curling into drizzle-thick skies before fading into pale nothingness. You pass the small clinic near the riverbank. Its sliding doors stand open despite the rain, revealing rows of straw mats laid out for patients. Inside, quiet groans and stifled sobs echo softly under low wooden beams. The young doctor from earlier sits beside a child lying rigid on her back, eyes wide and unblinking, fingers curled inward like dying lotus petals. Historians still argue whether these final stages of Minamata disease were documented fully or hidden to protect reputations. Some records describe twisted bodies left to waste away on thin futons in silent rooms. Others hint that photographs and notes vanished from archives under quiet orders from above. A quirky detail: families sometimes tucked tiny good luck charms into pillows of the dying, hoping spirits would guide them safely into rebirth without carrying poisoned limbs into the next world. You probably won't survive this if your legs can no longer obey your mind. Mercury paralysis begins in toes, climbing up calves and thighs until even breathing feels like pulling air through iron wires wrapped around your chest. Outside the clinic, men gather under dripping eaves, cigarettes glowing dimly in morning gloom. They speak in low voices about compensation forms, rumors of lawsuits, and company men who came bearing crisp envelopes to silence angry fathers. One spits into the mud, muttering, "They buy our pain and call it charity." Historians still debate whether these early payouts brought justice or betrayal. Some say they helped families survive rising medical costs. Others argue they erased true accountability, burying responsibility beneath polite sums and stamped seals. You continue along the river, where rain pelts the water's surface in 1,000 silent pinpricks. Fishermen's boats bob at their moorings, nets coiled and dripping with pale rivulets that swirl into the dark currents below. No one fishes today. The market stands empty under tarpaulin sheets. Fresh fish scent replaced by damp earth and rotting lotus leaves. Further along the bank, you see an old woman kneeling in wet reeds, pouring a cup of sake into the river. Her hands tremble violently as she tips the cup, clear liquid vanishing instantly into black ripples. She bows deeply, forehead pressed to slick mud, whispering a prayer that dissolves into drizzle and cicada song. Perhaps she begs forgiveness. Perhaps she says goodbye. You probably won't survive this if your soul fractures under such sorrow. Mercury poisons not only blood and bone, but hope, love, dignity, faith. It unravels life's bright threads until nothing remains but trembling hands pressing offerings into an unfeeling current. Historians still argue whether the river ever forgave what was done to it. Some say fish stocks returned, waters ran clear, and birds nested safely once more. Others believe its bed remains lined with silent poison, too deep to dig out, too patient to vanish. The rain falls harder now, drumming on bamboo groves, tin rooftops, and factory smokestacks rising beyond distant trees. You hear its steady rhythm mingling with faint temple bells tolling noon, their iron voices drifting through gray drizzle like final benedictions. And the river flows on beneath falling rain, carrying mercury through mud and reeds, through fish and rice, through children and elders, through prayers and dreams, weaving its silent dance until all becomes still at last. The rain eases into a soft mist that settles gently across the sleeping village. Lanterns glow faint behind paper screens, casting small pools of golden light onto dark wooden floors. The river moves slowly now under a silver dawn, its surface smooth and unbroken, reflecting pale sky and silent willow branches dipping their thin fingers into its depths. You feel the breeze drift against your cheek, cool and scented with wet earth, bamboo leaves, and faint traces of sea salt carried upriver. The world quietens into stillness. Cicadas pause their endless chorus. Roosters remain silent in the soft gray light. Only the river continues its calm journey out to sea, carrying everything that ever was whispered, wept, or forgotten. You walk along the bank, sandals brushing damp grass, watching thin spirals of steam rise from rooftops as villagers light morning cooking fires. Somewhere far away, a temple bell tolls once, deep and slow, its echo fading into mist-shrouded hills beyond. Your breathing slows to match the gentle rhythm of drifting ripples. Each exhale releases tension from your shoulders. Each inhale fills you with quiet, with silence, with the acceptance of all that was and will be. The trembling stops, the voices fade. Only the river remains, gliding on into forever beneath a sky growing pale with promise of another day. Tonight, let your thoughts drift away downriver. Let your fears dissolve into its vastness. Let your body soften into the warmth of your bed, into the gentle hum of the fan, into the hush of dawn that always comes after the darkest hours. Sleep now. Rest. The river flows on without you. You are safe. You are at peace. You are home.